You check your account before buying something you can afford. The money is there, you know it is there, but something tightens anyway. You pause at the checkout, not because the purchase is unreasonable, because spending feels unreasonable. You earn well, you have been careful for years, and still, every time you spend money on yourself, a quiet hum of wrongness arrives. Not regret, not fear, something quieter. The sense that you haven't quite earned the right to enjoy what you have earned. That moment is not caution, it is something else entirely. That feeling is not a character flaw, it is the predictable output of a system. That system trained you to treat your own money as a liability. You were handed a set of rules early. Spend less than you earn, save before you enjoy, delay the reward. These were not bad rules. In context, they were survival instructions. They created a buffer between you and the worst outcomes. But survival instructions don't come with an expiry date. The system that protected you during scarcity doesn't deactivate when the scarcity ends, so it keeps running. And every time you spend, even carefully within your means, the alarm fires. Here's what makes this structural rather than personal. The guilt isn't triggered by the amount, it's triggered by a mismatch. Your internal programming says spending is risk, your present reality says you are safe. The system cannot reconcile those two signals, so it defaults to the older one. The system was never designed to update itself. That is not a flaw in you, that is a design limitation in the system. You have a strong quarter. You book a trip, budgeted, researched, completely affordable. You've done everything right, but the whole time something sits in the background. Not fear, not regret, the persistent sense that you haven't quite done enough to deserve the enjoyment yet. The trip ends, you return to work, and somehow it feels correct to get back to being responsible again. But there is something underneath this that nobody addresses directly. The guilt has a specific target. It lands hardest on things that exist purely for you. A meal you didn't strictly need, a coat when you already own one, a weekend that produces no output and benefits nobody else. The system didn't only say be careful with money, it said spending is acceptable only when it serves a function. Enjoyment on its own does not count as a function. You can spend on a course and feel fine. You can upgrade your equipment and feel fine. But spend on a dinner because you wanted one? The guilt arrives, on time, every time. Here's what makes it worse. The more financially responsible you had been, the stronger this response becomes. Every year of discipline adds another layer of conditioning. Every sacrifice reinforces the rule. The people most equipped to spend freely often feel most prohibited from doing so. Here's the part nobody warns you about. The guilt does not protect your finances. It makes you avoidant. You delay reasonable purchases until they become urgent, expensive ones. You underinvest in things that would improve your health and your everyday life. And then, periodically, the suppression breaks. You spend impulsively on something you don't value because the pressure had to go somewhere. The guilt didn't prevent spending, it redirected it into worse spending. And it goes deeper than that. This guilt did not start with you. You inherited it. It came through the people who raised you. They received it from those who raised them. Financial anxiety travels this way, not through inheritance, but through language, through what was said at the dinner table when a bill arrived, through the way pleasure was described as indulgence, through the way indulgence was described as what irresponsible people do. You learned that money was serious, that spending was the dangerous end of money, that the virtuous relationship with money required restraint. So restraint became identity, responsible, careful, not someone who wastes things. These identities are load-bearing. When you spend, even wisely, even deliberately, you press against them. The guilt is not protecting your account. It is protecting a self-image built around not spending. This is why earning more doesn't solve it. Double your income, and the same tightness follows you to the checkout. The number changes, the feeling doesn't, because the feeling was never really about the number. The income level changes, the position changes, but the baseline guilt travels with you. It upgrades quietly alongside everything else. Here is what the structure actually looks like from the outside. You are not guilty because you overspend. You are guilty because you were trained to treat spending as inherently suspicious. That training had a real purpose at a real moment. It is now running on instructions that no longer match your circumstances, and it has costs that rarely get counted. The experiences you deferred, the comfort you withheld from yourself while being responsible, the years of earning without the actual permission to use what you earned. The whole framework assumed the rules were permanent, that restraint was a virtue in itself, not a tool for a specific moment. So the exit was never built in. You were expected to keep going indefinitely without a destination. Spending guilt is not a moral signal, it is a lag. Your circumstances updated, the internal rules did not follow. You did everything right, and somehow that is the problem. You saved when others spent freely. You were careful when others were reckless. You made the sensible choices year after year because that is what the situation required. And now the situation has changed. The pressure is lower, the buffer exists, but the alarm is still running because nobody gave you a map for what comes after discipline. The whole architecture was built to get you to safety. Nobody designed the part where you're allowed to live there. The guilt you carry into every purchase, that is not weakness. That is the residue of doing things right for a long time. It is the responsibility leaves behind when the emergency is over. It doesn't dissolve when your circumstances improve. It dissolves slowly when you begin to see it for what it is. When you understand that voice is running old code, not truth, not wisdom, old code. The system actually runs on 3 rules, not the ones you were given, the rules the system actually operates on. Rule 1. Scarcity conditioning doesn't require scarcity to keep functioning. The rules you built during a tight period keep running long after the tightness is gone. The tightness is gone, the rules are not. They don't self-correct, they require deliberate interruption. And that interruption will feel, at first, exactly like irresponsibility. That is not a coincidence. Responsible behavior and irresponsible behavior were trained to feel identical from the outside. Rule 2, spending guilt intensifies with financial responsibility. The more consistently you have followed the approved rules, the deeper the identity attachment becomes. The people most equipped to spend freely feel most prohibited from doing so. Rule 3, guilt deferred becomes guilt displaced. Suppressing the permission to spend on things you value doesn't eliminate spending, it redirects it. The pressure finds an outlet, usually something impulsive, low value, easily justified, precisely because it bypassed your deliberate decision-making. The system produces spending regardless. The guilt only shapes what kind. Somewhere in your past, caution kept you safe. That version of the rules made sense for that version of your life. What you're carrying now isn't wisdom, it's the echo of wisdom from a moment that is already past. The money you earned is yours. That is not a motivational statement, it is a structural fact. The permission to use it was built into the same system that rewarded the earning. It was never conditional on feeling ready. Nobody told you that part. That is the piece that was always missing. Not discipline, not income, not willpower, the permission, the understanding that earning and using were always meant to coexist. The system was never supposed to run forever in one direction. You were meant to arrive somewhere.